Okay, great.
I want to welcome everybody to Chicano, Chicana, Latino, Latino Heritage Month. It's still not switching over. What do you think, Melinda? Just keep on going?
Yeah,
just keep on going. Okay. So first of all, I just want to pay homage to the ancestral land and water of the Chumash people. I know we're not at campus right now, but this is a Santa Barbara City College event. My name is Dr.Thomas A.Carrasco. I'm the chair of American Ethnic Studies. And before we get started, I want to take a moment and just again think and pay homage to all the people that have passed from COVID-19. Just a second. Thank you so much. I just think it's really important for us to acknowledge the state that we're in regards to this pandemic and how it's affecting all people. As I was saying, my name is Dr. Thomas A.Carrasco. I'm the chair of American Ethnic Studies. Ethnic Studies is an interdisciplinary study of race, ethnicity, indigeneity in the United States. Chicano, Chicana Studies is a study of Mexicans and Latinos in the United States. That being said, I'm going to just get started with the presentation. Again, a lot of this we're celebrating and paying homage to Chicano, Chicana, Latino populations of the United States. I wanted to make this informative and at the same time a celebration of our culture. So I'm going to start a little my lecture here. Could you see that, everybody? Melinda, could you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So again, being in an academic setting that we're in, as I lecture, we're in an academic setting. So when you make a statement, you need to substantiate your claim. A lot of people were asking us why we did not use the word Latinx, and I'll get into that in a second. As you could see, the terms that we're looking at: Mexican, Mexican American, Chicano, Chicana, Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Chicanx, Central Americans, right? So there's a lot of identities within Chicano, Chicana studies. But before we get started, I just wanted to, as a professor, I'm really into definitions. And I wanted to just to define race. So when you take my class, Chicano Studies 101, you take history of racism. Race, when I say race, I'm talking about the black race from Africa, the white race from Europe, the red race from the Americas, and the yellow race from Asia. That being said, race does not exist. So that's what we learned in Chicano Studies. It is a social construct. And how do I substantiate my claim? DNA, right? There's no such thing as a race gene. So race does not exist, but racism does. And what is racism? Racism is a system of oppression. Racism is a system of oppression. It is when one group excludes another group from education, healthcare, housing, and banking. When one group excludes another group from education, healthcare, housing, and capital. Capital meaning banking. So just keep those two words, those two concepts in mind as we discuss Mexican, Mexican American, Chicano, Chicana, Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Chicanx, and Central Americans. So when I teach Chicano Studies and history history of racism in the United States, I use this generational map. And this generational map, it's just used to be able to study Chicanos, Chicanas, Latinos, Latinas in the United States. So we are from 1900 to 1930. So one of the things that we get into in my class in regards to, I teach this concept that Chicanos, Chicanas, Latinos, Latinas, we are ancient. We are ancient. Could you mute them, Melinda?
Yeah.
Got it, okay. We are ancient. Chicanos, Chicanas, Latinos, Latinas, Mexican people are ancient and simultaneously modern. We are ancient and simultaneously modern. That being said, just keep that in the back of your mind, right? So how Mexicans are indigenous to the Southwest. We are indigenous to the Southwest. Simultaneously in the United States, we are legally, quote unquote, can be viewed as immigrant. This generational map that we're looking at from 1900 to 1930, we have the Mexican Revolution. Mexican Revolution, immigrant generation. So when Mexican immigrant generation, very, very Mexicano, over 1 million Mexicanos come from the Mexican Revolution, speak Spanish, do not know the system, hardest job, lowest pay. So that's the immigrant generation, very, very Mexicano, speak Spanish, do not know the system, hardest jobs, lowest pay. The children of the immigrant generation, the Mexican Revolution generation, is the Mexican American generation. These are Mexican Americans that want to assimilate. The key concept here is assimilation. They want to be American. They speak English and Spanish. If you all have ever seen a pachuca, zoot suit, that's a perfect example of a Mexican American. And just, again, one of the major teaching points in my class is the industrialization of the Southwest, pretty much from 1880 to 1940, which includes the Mexican and the Mexican American generation. We have the industrialization of the Southwest. So we have 1880, we have the Chinese Exclusionary Act, where the US government excludes Chinese immigrants from coming in. 1910, the Gentleman's Agreement, where they exclude Japanese from coming in. So then the US turns to Mexico for labor. And so the main point here is that from 1880 to 1940, the industrialization of the Southwest is mainly due by Mexican immigrants. And these these industries that I'm talking about is the railroad, agriculture, mining, and manufacturing. Just a historical fact, right? So the Mexican American generation, again, want to assimilate, they want to be American, but they are experiencing a lot of racism. Segregation in school, segregation in restaurants, etc. The children of the Mexican American generation are Chicanos, Chicanas, right? So again, a social construct, Chicano, Chicana. So my definition of Chicano, Chicana, 1521, it intertwines our indigeneity and our Europeanness. 1848, it intertwines our Americanness and our Mexicanness. But most importantly, it connects us to the land. It states that we are not immigrants. We are indigenous, especially to the Southwest. And how do we substantiate that claim? 1050 BC, the Uto Azteca Empire emerges, and that's where the Maya, the Olmeca, the Azteca, the Chumash, the Pueblo, all civilizations emerge from the four corners. And then we have the present, right? From 1980 to the present, we have Chicano, Chicana, Mexican, Mexican American, Latinx, Latino, Latina, Hispanic, American. And so most people, I would argue, identify with just saying I'm Hispanic, right? But what I want to say is that we work so hard to create the word Chicano, Chicana, and then the system comes back with the concept Hispanic. And the concept Hispanic delineates our indigeneity, and it's a very Eurocentric term, and it's a mainstream term. And this could lay the foundation of the reason why there's so many identities and so many names for this population. From 1980, there's 9 million Latinos, 1990, 22 million Latinos, 2000, 35 million Latino Latinas, 2012, there's 50 million. Estimations is by 2050, there will be 100 million Latinos in the United States. That being said, I want to just say a few words. Currently in 2019, there's 61 million Latinos. So amongst the Latinos, 61% are Mexican, 9.7% are Puerto Rican, 4.0 are Cuban, 3.9 are Salvadorian, and then there's 3.8 Guatemalan, Nicaraguan, Costa Rica, and other Latinos. So my point here is that I always teach my students that you choose your identity. Nobody should be telling you what you are. So in my class, the beauty of higher education, the beauty of ethnic studies, the beauty of Chicano studies is that we are studying a live culture. It is fluid, it is changing every day. And I love, this is Stuart Hall. Identity is a construction, a process that is never completed, always in process. So those of you that have not heard this information before, I hope you can walk away and ask yourselves, right? To be, like, what are you in regards to culture, to race, to class, right? But the most exciting part is becoming what you can become, right? And so those are the identities that I wanted to go over. Lately, we have a lot of people have been using the concept Latinx. They've also been using Chicanx, right? So these are new gender neutral pan-ethnic labels. 76% of all Latinos have never heard of Latinx. 3% use it. 20% have heard of it but do not use it. So my main point here is, again, as we do at Santa Barbara City College, we develop critical thinkers, right? And so what's so important about the word Chicano, Chicana, is that we create that term for ourselves, and it's a political statement. So the question is to ask is, who has the power to just change an entire name of a people, right? So like the word Hispanic, and I have time to discuss this, you know, I give examples. It's like going into France and saying, you are no longer French. You will now be ooh la la, or whatever, right? And so again, who has the power to change the entire name of a people, right? And that's what we study. But what I want to do end with is one of the theories that I teach is Chicano rhetorics, Chicano culture, to analyze how Mesoamerican and Western cultural materials intersect and interact to produce new possibilities through a dynamic strategy of mestizo invention. Mexican, European, American equals Chicano, Chicana, Mexican, American, Latino, Latino, Hispanic, right? So this is just a theory that I utilize when I teach popular culture. That being, and the main point was that there's already rhetoric in the Americas before Europeans came here. And then to close off this, the last part of this that I want to talk about is in regards, and the other concept that I teach also to be aware of is the master narrative. So the master narrative in the United States is that all Americans are immigrants. Everybody's an immigrant, and that's absolutely incorrect, right? Native Americans, and I argue that Mexicans are indigenous to the Southwest. Again, the Uto Azteca Empire, 1050 BC, were ancient and simultaneously modern, right? And changing every day. So again, you know, it's even difficult to find a map that includes Mexico and the United States. But what I wanted to end this lecture with is the concept of Latina cultural citizenship. And like I said, there's not one word, there's not one identity that is correct, but it could be strategic, right? So Latina is it emerges in the 90s. Like if you think of who's the most famous Latina in the world, right? Jennifer Lopez, right? New York. So when I did a lecture in New York, I used the word Latino, Latina to be inclusive, you know? So again, it's strategic. It can be very, very regional. But what I wanted to really point out with this map, there's 35 million Latino, Latinas that live between LA and San Antonio. So it's a phenomenon, right? Our population is increasing 5 times more rapidly than the white population. And one of the things that I really, really want to emphasize is that our societies are intertwined. So we live in so right now people could argue that the Mexican population, the Chicano population is an ethno-racial group, right? In regards to being racialized. So what I want to point out here is that, say, if you look at Tijuana, right? San Diego and Tijuana are intertwined. Thousands of people live in Tijuana, they work in San Diego. Thousands of people live in San Diego, they work in Tijuana. You could say that about Juarez and El Paso. You could say that about Reynoso and Matamoros. So again, our societies are intertwined, you know, for centuries, right? And again, this is, I wanna, in Chicano studies, when we study immigration, we study it as a human rights issue, as a human rights issue. And one of the concepts I want to introduce y'all to is Latino-Latina cultural citizenship. This Latino-Latina cultural citizenship names social practices and claims and establishes a distinct social space for Latinos in the United States. Latino-Latina cultural citizenship. It names a social practice, claims and establishes a distinct social space for Latinos and Latinas in the United States. A perfect example of Latina cultural citizenship is Chicana studies. I'm very, very excited to say that Santa Barbara City College is one of the few colleges that has an ethnic studies department. We have we offer degrees, AA degrees in Chicano studies, Black studies, Asian American studies, and ethnic studies. We are in collaboration with the Chicano studies departments at UCSB, Cal State Channel Islands, UCLA, Northridge, San Jose State. Chicano studies is vibrant right now. It is really, really student and ethnic studies in general. Our classes are packed at Santa Barbara City College. So again, you know, Chicano studies, it subverts the racist rhetoric. Like we do not use the word illegal alien. Illegal alien dehumanizes people. We use undocumented. Immigration is a very complicated issue, but what we do know is that Mexicans, Latinos are human beings, and it's a human rights issue. And just to be very technical, illegal alien is a noun being used as an adjective. It's grammatically incorrect, and we need to humanize people and use the word undocumented worker, undocumented people, and we need to deal with immigration. You know, what is the answer? Immigration, there's no 1, 2, buckle my shoe answer. And so again, Latino cultural citizenship, claiming space, claiming social practices through culture and everyday life. So that's my my lecture. And again, one of the major concepts that we teach in Chicano studies is structural analysis versus an individualistic analysis. So the example that I give with a structural analysis is that if you look at LA Unified School District, it's one of the second largest educational systems in the nation. 60%, 70% Latinos, 50% of Latinos drop out of LA Unified School District. If you give a structural analysis of LA Unified School District, you could say, well, what kind, do they have books? What kind of teachers do they have? What kind of schools do they have? If you give a structural analysis of why so many Latinos are dropping out of high school, right? That's a structural analysis. An individualistic analysis is Juan from Garfield went to Harvard, therefore there's no problem. That's an individualistic analysis, okay? So again, these are just concepts that we teach, and I'll end off with the concept of hegemony. Hegemony is when the elites convince the masses that the elites' interests are the masses' interests. Hegemony is when the elites convince the masses that the elites' interests are the masses' interests. And this is done through coercion and consent. So as you all watch the debate tonight, you can ask yourself, what is Trump trying to convince us of? What is Biden trying to convince us of, right? Hegemony. So with that, I would like to hand it off to our amazing professor, Melinda Gandara.
Thank you so much, Tomas. I'm going to ask you to go back. Perfect. Thank you. First of all, I wanted to say that was an excellent presentation, and you really draw upon a very strong historical analysis. And it's important for us to understand how important the past is in defining our own future. Today in the Los Angeles Times, the front page was highlighting that revisiting an anti-Latino past. It's an effort by the Los Angeles Times to acknowledge the misuse of terms over the long period of time. And I think that really speaks very well to what Professor Carrasco was highlighting. But I wanted to shift gears and just talk about rather briefly the importance of art in our communities. And one of the things that we're able to do here at Santa Barbara City College is we have made a wonderful inroad with the Santa Barbara Museum of Art Instruction and Independent Studies program. And I have to shout out to Akil Hill for helping me make sure that I get all that paperwork done, because it's one of the things that takes quite a bit of time. But in that programming, what we've been able to do is work with the Director of Education. And it's been absolutely crucial, because what it does is it acknowledges the fact pre-COVID that approximately 25,000 students attended the museum through either museum visits or student programs. This is a dynamic opportunity for our own students in our program to be able to be working with a major museum in our community and working collectively in underscoring the importance of art outreach. What I wanted to do is just highlight some of the art available to us even in the pandemic era. Hopefully upcoming, we'll be seeing the reopening of Portrait of Mexico Today. This is the 1932 mural at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, painted by David Alfaro Siqueiros. This is one of 3 murals he painted while in Los Angeles during that period of time. We hope that that opens in February of 2021, and we will be working with interns in providing the didactic materials for schools in that presentation. We also have what I call the East Side Library murals. These are accessible, get on a bike, go out there, walk around. And again, the museum, the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, has been very structurally connected to this as well. We do outreach at the East Side Library. And also one of the murals painted in 2011, our home, was a collaboration between the museum and the East Side Library. Open at the Santa Barbara Museum, open at the Santa Barbara Cemetery is Ramos Martinez's murals there, painted in 1934. A wonderful little gem that often people don't know about, a rather very important Mexican muralist. And we're very fortunate, one of the curators for the exhibition that was on him about a year ago, Rachel Hindry, is with us here on our screen today. We also have at the Ventura Museum of Art, Huelga, photographs from the front line. These are amazing photographs that are virtual, through a virtual exhibition about the 1970s farm workers' strikes. I highly encourage you to engage with them. Jorge Corralejo had all of these wonderful scrapbooks of photographs that had to be archivally removed and then preserved, and that exhibition is currently up. Another exhibition was a virtual exhibition by one of our own students here at Santa Barbara City College, Michael Montenegro. He did Pray for Me, which was highlighted rather recently in the Independent when it highlighted the work of Adriana Arriaga. And what I wanted to talk about is that she was a former Santa Barbara City College student who ended up getting her MFA there in UC Davis. Made the front cover just a week ago in the Santa Barbara Independent, and that was primarily because another one of our students, Selena Garcia, highlighted her work and said that it was worth looking at. So Charles Donovan went out and actually had some interview time with her. The other one I wanted to point out is Raíces Santa Barbara. This was an exhibition by one of our students, Veronica Sanchez, who's part of the PEAK program. She was a summer high school student who's on her way to UC Riverside, and they did a cultural art exhibition that is also open online. And then just to end with Ariana for just a moment, the importance of Ariana is that the cover basically says, Ariana Arriaga comes home, creates the future. We are in this future phase, and we applaud our students for the work they've been doing and the outreach efforts that are combined with the work that we do here at City College. So with that, Tomas, why don't we talk about some of our great students?
Great. So before I introduce our students, I just want to state, again, I want to emphasize one of the beauties of ethnic studies, Chicano studies, Black studies, Asian American studies, Native American studies, is what happens in our classes. I just really want to emphasize that, like, I teach history of racism, and when you have, so we know Santa Barbara is 40% Latino Mexican, right? Santa Barbara City College is 40% Mexican Latino. And one of the beauties that happens in our classes is when rich people from Montecito, Mexicanos, African Americans, Chicanos, when we are in a class studying ourselves, we learn from each other. And as we are seeing, ethnic studies has just become a high school requirement at the Santa Barbara Unified School District, high school district. I had like 7 teachers take my class this summer, and ethnic studies is on the move. And that's, I want to emphasize, we need to create a society that we create, not just that we're handed to, and the stakes are high. And so again, learning from different people's different cultures, when difference is not a negative, but difference is a positive. And that's what ethnic studies does. That's what Black studies does. That's what Chicano studies does. And the most important, like Melinda was talking about, so I'm sorry I didn't say, Melinda teaches Chicano art, Mexican art, an area of expertise, Chicano art. So one of the biggest things that we thrive on is when our students transfer to UCSB, when our students go to Berkeley, Cal State Northridge, Cal State Channel Islands, we are literally changing lives. And so right now, we're gonna have Shayna Mario speak as a student from Santa Barbara City College. So welcome, Shayna.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Carrasco, for asking me to come speak. I am truly honored to talk about my experience with ethnic studies and Chicano studies, because it's really shaped me, not just academically, but in terms of my future career and as a person. I just graduated this spring from City College, and initially I was going for a associate to transfer in history. And along the way, I took actually history of Mexican art with Melinda Gandara, and absolutely fell in love with Chicano studies. And then at the same time, began taking ethnic studies with Dr. Carrasco. And it was almost by accident, but involving myself and getting into these programs has shown me how I can be the best possible teacher, not just in history now, social sciences, ethnic studies. Dr. Carrasco mentioned how school districts are now offering ethnic studies in high schools. Well, I think they should be in every high school. If it's not that way, by the time I'm a teacher, then I will do everything in my power to change that. And in learning ethnic studies, it has me look at history in a different way. Our curriculum now in public schools is very Eurocentric, and with, like Dr. Carrasco said, 61 million Latinos in this country, that's unacceptable that it's just taught from one viewpoint. So my experience in learning ethnic studies, Chicano studies at Santa Barbara City College has, I feel, really opened up my eyes and set new paths so that I can develop, so that I can hold, when I hold a classroom space, that it's open for every single person, that nobody feels excluded. Because a student, a person, anyone who feels represented, who feels a part of, is going to succeed. They're going to have the opportunity to succeed much more than if they're set aside. This is a multicultural society we live in, and I think as people, we need to start acting that way. We need to start making sure that everybody has a place at the table. And I had those beliefs beforehand, but the ethnic studies department, the Chicano studies department really solidified it and gave me sort of a ladder in terms of figuring out how to be part of the solution, you know, to hear all our stories. Every single person benefits when all of our stories are told. And I feel very passionate about it, and I feel so grateful to have had this experience and have learned from, in my opinion, the best, and take this on my journey. So, and thank you guys for listening to me. I really very much appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shayna, so much. And next, we have our amazing student, Diego Lascana Avila. Diego?
Hi, Professor. Thank you for
Right.
having me. I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the meeting, and thank you all, especially everyone who organized this meeting and for having us come together. Um, and just to give my own perspective, being a local from Santa Barbara and Goleta, growing up in the educational system, we never had anything but that Eurocentric perspective that Shayna was speaking to earlier. Uh, Throughout high school, I never had the perspective of the Chicano studies perspective that completely shifts the dominant narrative upside down with substantiated evidence. It wasn't until my very first class at Santa Barbara City College where I attended the class with Professor Carrasco. I believe it was Racism in America. And that completely opened my eyes to the entire Department of Chicano Studies and the history and the perspective that it lends to us. Uh, and from the very beginning, I felt really inspired. Like I finally felt, reflected in my own curriculum. Like I could see myself. And so the inspiration to reconnect to your cultural roots, to see back, it really paired well with, at the time I was reconnecting with the practice of danza azteca, and being in this classroom really complemented that at the same time, because I was learning a lot about our history and our traditions. And not long after that, I met Professor Gandara, who brought an entire different perspective layer on top of that. And it was really amazing that I could benefit from such high minds in our department that are so happy to share this information with us. So much that I was even inspired to, personally by Professor Carrasco, to pursue teaching. I've spent a few semesters being a tutor for Chicano studies for his class, and it really has sparked an interest to continue on the tradition of knowledge and passing down the knowledge, especially during these times when we need ethnic studies implemented into the academic systems. And this also goes hand in hand with the movement in Santa Barbara, the local movement of ethnic studies now, which tries to do that exact thing, implement ethnic studies as a high school requirement. And so as soon as I started taking these classes, I felt like everything was tying together. And even though I wasn't sure what my future held, these classes really helped cement my interests. It helped open my eyes into other subjects such as anthropology, archaeology, history. And it made me feel like I was worthy of achieving really high goals, and I was worthy of setting high expectations for myself that I didn't see myself achieving beforehand in high school and stuff like that. And then later on in my career of the Chicano Studies Department at CC, I came across the idea of political activism, student activism, integrated into the learning and the academic aspect of it and the cultural aspect of it. And then came the idea of restarting the club Mecha, which is the Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, or Chicanex de Aztlán. And since the chapter at SBCC was dormant, we decided to reanimate it essentially and bring back the club and the activism work that came along. We reconnected with La Casa de la Raza downtown. We would do ceremony, danza azteca. We would bring our culture to campus. We would bring presenters, lecturers, and people that would bring knowledge themselves and share it. And it was really an amazing opportunity to be able to not only learn about the political aspect of Chicano studies, but also practice it and live it as student activists in our own campus community, really seeing a change and bringing our own images to light and seeing how our community reflects to that, and there's a pride that comes along with that, and there's also a pride that comes along with keeping the tradition going of passing down this knowledge and the culture. And with that, I eventually, just like Shayna, graduated last semester in the spring, and I will be going to UCSB, thankfully, that as my goal. And I will be continuing Chicano studies in all the doors it can open, and all the subjects that come along with the long road. Thankfully, UCSB is one of the few universities that has such a high degrees in Chicano studies, which means that you can pursue it for such a long time. And with the inspiration of Professor Carrasco, I think I will do just that and see what doors open up even more as I go along to a PhD program, teaching, continuing to tutor. And it has really changed my life and created a direction for me to pursue. And it has, well, yeah, I think that is it.
All right, Diego, thank you so much. I'm excited for you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. Thank you.
So, so again, this is a Chicana, Latino event. And one of the most important things that we're doing, and I just want to be literal, right? Because I'm just such a literal professor in regards to claiming space, right? Claiming space, claiming time. And with that in mind, I'd like to give voice to one of our transfer students also, Tia Lucita. Could you unmute her, Melinda? Tia Lucita.
Oh, yes. Thank you, mijo.
You can't see you, Tia Lucita.
I know. Hold on. I'm locking my bike up, mijo. Thank you so much. Hold on, mijo. This technology, it just gets to me. Here we go. Can you see me?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see everybody. Oh, my goodness. Good afternoon to everybody. The tios, the tias, the maestros, maestras, the compadres, comadres, consejeros, consejeras, los directoras, las profesores, pues todos juntos aquí. Gracias. Ay, the ride was so beautiful over here, mijo. I'm sorry I was a bit late, but thank you for waiting for me. I was riding my scooter over here, and people were staring at me on the freeway like if I looked funny or something. I said, I can't believe them staring at me. Then my dress got caught in the chain to my bike. Ay, mijo, so I made a mini skirt. Forget it, it's hot. It feels so good though in Santa, mijo. It's so wonderful. So anyways, mijo, I wanted to tell you, I only have a few minutes because guess what? Tonight they asked me to ask and to represent the viejitas at the presidential debate, mijo. Fíjate, I said, okay, I'm there. You wait for me and I'll be there. And I have a lot to say tonight. So let me tell you what's going on really quick, mijo, in the community report. So, you know, I have an announcement, mijo. The Million Viejita March, I had to postpone it because our scooters, not only because of COVID, mijo, but our scooters se quebró. Muchos scooters broke. And so the automotive department, mijo, they're fixing the scooters as fast as they can, mijo. They're so efficient. And I love it. Keeping it in the community, mijo. So we were supposed to march from Casa de la Raza to the courthouse. And then, mijo, I have my headquarters off of Milpas. It says Tia's Taco Truck. Okay? So just in case you miss me and you can't recognize Tia, come to my taco truck and I'll open my doors, mijo. And you know, everybody's always asking me, Tia, you look so pretty. Your skin is so soft and brown and smooth. Pues, mijo, let me tell you something. I have my own line, and I'll be going to share it with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. And mira, Cardi B's coming to pick me up too. I have my line of Crema Suprema. Mijo, everybody's asking me, what do you use, Tia, besides your lectures and your knowledge and sharing your wisdom? I was there in 1969, mijo. I was there at the Chicano Power Movement, mijo, and I'm proud. I'm still lecturing. I'm still studying. Education is a lifelong learning, mijo. And I thank everybody at Santa Barbara City, todos los profesores y los consejeros. Age doesn't mean nothing, mijo. They always ask me to talk in their classes anyways. So, anyways, I am going to do my lecture, and I'm going to speak tonight for the viejitos and viejitas to leave our Social Security alone. I know Medicare, Social Security, education, healthcare, labor rights, affordable housing, rent control, and I'm proud to announce we just got a $10 million grant through the Dolores Huerta Foundation. She's my comadre. She's 90 years old. She's way older than me, though, but don't tell her I told you. Ay, Dolores, she's so beautiful and so active también. And mijo, I better hurry up. Cardi B's truck is outside. My comadre, Judge Chata, she's been helping her because Cardi, she's going through a divorce with upset. You know, she's been very upset. In fact, Judge Chata forgot her gavel. I gotta go take her gavel very soon, mijo. So I'm going to, mijo, make sure I'm in the schedule. Santa Barbara City College, they also hired me for my Chicana yoga classes, my Choga 101. Y también my Chicana karate classes, mijo, Chingazos 101. You can take both in one day. You might get a little tired because, Tia, I may be older, but I got a lot of energy. Can you tell? This whole talk has been one sentence to me. I'll go on and on, mijo. So anyways, thank you so much for having me. Look out for me on the debate tonight, mijo. And in fact, you know, I'll just say, I'll leave it with this. Come to Tita's Tacos, mijo, tonight, later on, al rato. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much, Tia Lucita.
Bye.
Great. So here in this event, we are definitely into democracy. So we have another transfer student.
Who logged on? Liz.
Che Castro. Che Castro, how are you doing?
Hold on. Oh man, don't tell
I'm
me.
good. Can you hear me, Dr. Carrasco?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me and for addressing this wonderful intergenerational crowd. And I am, by the way, if you don't know who I am the most radical Chicano in all of Aztlán, just kind of west of the 101. But I'm not 100% Chicano. That's the problem everyone has with me. I'm half Chicano, half Cubano. Cubano on the side of my mother, y soy Chicano por parte de un amigo de mi papá. That's not important. What I want to get to is something that Tia Lucita and the students brought up, and that is the importance of different generations. I wanted to talk about the importance of intergenerational and interracial and inter-ideological Chicano movements of the future. And I like to spell Chicano with an X it saves a little printer ink, but it also helps us connect to our indigenous roots. And it kind of looks sexy on t-shirts también. Anyhow, I have to toot my horn, or better yet, my concha, that I am part indígena. I'm actually various indigenous groups. I'm part of Tongva, Tanga. I'm wearing a tanga right now. I'm part Chumash because my mom told me the other day, look, Che, you smoke Chumash, you drink Chumash, you go to Mecha meetings Chumash, you're out there starting pedo, you're just Chumash. And then I'm also Gabrieleño. I was with Gabriel rolling a leño just a couple hours ago. So our indigenous roots are important. The intergenerational aspect, I think it's wonderful to hear these stories from Shayna and Diego, moving on with this outlook, not just to spread their education, but I think that's one thing ethnic studies and Chicano studies do uniquely, which has been a failure of the American gringo Yankee imperialismo education system, which is to take your education and go make other people rich with it. Take your intellectual wealth and add it to the wealth of the gringo Yankee imperialismo. Whereas Mecha and Chicano studies and ethnic studies has as one of its beautiful central tenets is to take your education back to the community, back to the barrio. And so it just warms my heart to hear that the students are already carrying that message, not just carrying the message, but living the message of returning to the comunidad. And so, you know, I'm always about the movimiento. My first words as a baby were Chicano power. My second words were, yo quiero Taco Bell. I was a little bit, you know, assimilating during the early years. It was because I was watching TV. And, you know, the other thing I wanted to add, purely as a Marxist, a dialectical materialist perspective, is that ethnic studies offers a dialectic. Ethnic studies, Chicano studies, gives us a look into the missing parts of American history. It looks into the shadows of oppression, of Yankee imperialismo, always with its high-tootin', highfalutin narrative, dominant gringo narrative of exceptionalism. And it hides the darker corners, the stories of oppression, the stories of our community, the victorious stories as well. And so ethnic studies is the dialectic. And what is the dialectic? It comes to us from Hegel. And El Señor Carlos Marx turns the dialectic on its feet, gives it legs, and says, you know, to challenge an idea. The dialectic goes back, it's a human development, but the gringos like to take it back to Greece and Aristotle, the challenge, you know, the questioning attitude of something. And ethnic studies does that. It questions American history. Right now, Donald, piece of beep, I'm sorry, I'm using his own words, but the presidente right now wants to take away the questioning, wants to take away the dialectic that ethnic studies has elaborated, that critical race theory offers this higher, more complete kind of knowledge. And so I want to remind us that ethnic studies is that dialectical challenge to this white supremacist narrative of the United States of America. And finally, I'm inspired with the students with this charge, you know, and never forget that there's power in these abstract ideas, in art, in paintings, in the literature, in our historia, there is art. And we are living through a 500-year quincentennial at the moment. I'm reading the Florentine Codex. What happened exactly? And you know, how fascinating is it to read your own history and to see that it is repeating itself. Exactly 500 years ago, there was an uprising. Exactly 500 years ago, there was invasions and attacks on our communities. It was 500 years ago, there was a plague that ravaged our world and the Western Hemisphere. And 500 years from this coming fall, there was a return of that plague. So we need to know our history, not only to know what has happened in the past and that the past is circular, but also to understand the greatness that is in our genes, the greatness and potential that is in our minds, that runs through our bloodstream. Our ancestors are with us. They're in our hair. Oh, and there's a pulga in my hair too, but that aside, I just want to end with a little abstract gift, and that is the dichos of the movimiento. I'm inspired by Diego's story of reanimating Mecha. Heck yes, we must bring Mecha back, and Mecha will bring our soul back. Mecha is known for the famous saying, La unión hace la fuerza. In unity, there is strength. Mechistas have also said countless times, our parents have worked with their hands so that we can work with our minds. And then I, Che Castro, have been known throughout Aztlán for my most radical saying, que mis padres trabajaron tan duro que yo nací cansado. I'm a little tired. It's water, garlic, and tequila. Keeps me going in the afternoon. But thank you, Dr. Carrasco, for this opportunity to address the Santa Barbara Ventura Oxnard contingent of the Movimiento. And as my tia Yoda would say, may the fuerza be with you.
Thank you so much, Che Castro.
Gracias.
Great.
You keep it going, Dr. Carrasco. You're the best, man. I'm taking your online classes, the next one you offer, on radical Chicano anti-imperialismo.
Okay, you better get those discussions in on time and make sure to cite on those essays, okay?
Simon, I'm taking notes. I got notes going.
Okay, you'll transfer to UCSB. I'll let them know, and you'll get double financial aid for sure.
That's what I'm talking about, socialismo.
Okay, everybody, I just wanted to, definitely this is, Chicano studies, but one of the major parts of the civil rights movement, of the Chicano power movement, the Black power movement, was cultural production, was teatro. And so Elias, Susan Carrasco, who was Tia Lucita, and I, we're in a comedy troupe called Chicano Secret Service. And this is political satire. So I see most of you are getting it and one of you are not, but that's okay. And at this time, I want to let a good friend of ours, he's a professor, and again, in the spirit of culture production, which is very powerful within agreed populations to express themselves within their own, from their own viewpoint, right? And again, so within this narrative, obviously, Chicanos and Chicanas have been centered at this narrative for the last 60 minutes. So I would like to introduce Professor from San Jose State, Chicano Studies. Let's give a big round of applause to Jonathan Gomez. How you doing, Jonathan?
Great. Thank you all so much. And, Dr. Carrasco, thank you so much for putting this on, and everyone else who contributed to organizing this event. This is fantastic. I've learned so much. I've laughed so much. It's just a beautiful gathering, just listening and learning from the students and the educators at SBCC. Just my praise and respect for everything that y'all are doing. So thank you so much for this opportunity to, share a poem with you. And, before I begin, I just want to say that, Santa Barbara is dear to my heart. It's the city in which, I attended UC Santa Barbara for my master's and doctorate degree. And while there, met, Dr. Carrasco, as well as the rest of Chicano Secret Service and, Professor Melinda Gandara. And so it's just a beautiful, event to see folks that I grounded with while there. But, I wanted to say that while in my time there, I learned how to, be an educator who is invested into, community. We're talking a lot about ethnic studies. We're talking about Chicano studies. And, one thing that I really, took away with me from my time in Santa Barbara is that, you know, these disciplines, you know, aren't anything without our ethnic communities and Chicano communities, right? And I think that everyone here today has really spoken to, you know, centering our communities and utilizing, you know, the university as a site to make sure that, you know, our communities have resources, right? And so, you know, I just wanted to say that, right? It's such a beautiful gathering, and just seeing what everyone's doing. But I'm going to ask if it's okay with you. Can I share a link to a magazine that I produce with my students here at San Jose State?
Yes, yes, yes.
And so, you know, if you have the time, please check out this link, y'all. It's the Culture Counts magazine. And before I continue, I want to say that, you know, the artwork that Melinda had mentioned about Adriana Arriaga, they actually earned their degree in Chicano Studies at San Jose State, right? And so, you know, here as well as in other places, we believe, you know, in cultural production and expressive culture as very much as political tools for empowerment and social mobilization for social rights and respect, right? And so that magazine link there is something that I've been working on, you know, with my students here at San Jose State for the last couple of years. We're the Culture Counts reading series, and we come together bi-weekly, and, you know, we engage in readings and also writings, and we share what we produce with one another. And this is the outcome of an effort that students really drove forward because they wanted to document, you know, what was going on in their communities with COVID-19, right? We know that the virus or the pandemic of poverty was long in existence before COVID-19. And so when COVID-19 hit here in San Jose, a lot of our, you know, communities here were just frustrated by the emerging inequalities in healthcare, housing, policing, and so on. And so I want to dedicate this poem to, you know, my students and to, you know, every student on this event here. And it's entitled A Blessing para los niños del mundo. And you won't find it in the magazine, but you know, there's other pieces in there that I know you'll enjoy. So this one is A Blessing. Bless the child that's got her own, who makes something out of nothing. Master matadora, dodging and defying deadly conditions, rushing at her in neighborhoods on the forgotten side of town. Bless all those born to disregarded races, youngsters expected to make peace with mediocrity, workers who live check to check in apartments where black mold grows just underneath the carpet. There are kids who scratch at rashes and fight forever flu-like conditions. All the people landlords choose to let cucarachas roam in the cupboards and rats nest in their walls. Bless the plastic trash bags used to carry the belongings of houseless mothers. May they not tear to pieces before it's time to pull out and lay down slabs of cardboard and cloth to pad the wretchedness of sleeping on sidewalks. Bless the children who develop looks of stone by the age of 10, crow's feet etched into the sides of their faces, a hard geography of perpetual humiliation. May they hold their heads high, building the might to look the world in its eyes. The interpreter, who translates the meaning of words on state letterhead to father's tongue. Notice of action, food stamps terminated. Give them strength. The performance artist, who professes to be full with having eaten only half the meal on the plate so mama can have a bite too. Give them strength. The criminalized, who knows to assume the position for cops who check pockets at every encounter on the way to school. Give them strength. The dispossessed, stripped of the bed at the shelter, sitting with mama and papa on a park bench at high noon in a heat wave in the middle of a pandemic. No water for drinking or washing hands, or no mask. Give them strength. The captured, wrapped in thermal mylar to avoid freezing in the Hilera, awaiting deportation to a village underlined in the company report as a site for another round of dispossession. Give them strength. And may every disregarded and hungry youth, wide eyes watching us, remember they are a blessing and far from a curse. Thank you.
All right. You want to do another one, or that's?
I have one more. Want me to read one more?
Yeah, go for it.
So this piece right here does appear in the magazine, and it's called The Weight of Miss Figueroa. On the corner of Alameda and Newhall, Miss Figueroa waits for the 22, for a ride to some far-off place, to some essential job, to do for others things they are incapable of doing for themselves. She has ventured into public from a unit in a crowded apartment complex just beyond the bus stop, where cracks run along walls in lightning strike pattern. The ceiling caves when neighbors above walk heavier than a tiptoe. Passing time, she counts hours necessary to meet the rising cost of rent. She worries over every cough she tries to hold back, feels her forehead for fever, thinks about staying home too. But who will take care of her children's needs in this city if not her? Miss Figueroa stands alone. Gray concrete beneath her chokes every green in sight, but not determination. No food, no lights, no roof, no warmth, not an option. Black scarf wraps around her neck, mask droops at her nose. She is unflinching about finding a way. Searching the Alameda, hope is a bus on time, a seat for the duration of the ride, and overtime with a lunch break long enough to put something in her stomach and check in on the kids. Miss Figueroa, in the wait, collects dignity from memories in the corner of her mind, remembers how despite being broke, she has never been broken, gathers courage from remembering how she has carried the weight of heavier crowns before this one, gains heart in knowing where the 22 travels is necessary for now, but only as a detour on the road to her true destiny. Thank you.
All right, right on, Jonathan. Thank you so much. So
Thank you all so much.
That's amazing. So in the spirit of culture of courageous conversations for outrageous times, again, claiming an educational space, a cultural space. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for questions, discussion. Anybody that wants to ask a question or discuss an issue. We gave you a lot. And so again, this is about a dialogue. So Melinda, are you there, Melinda?
I am.
Okay, so anybody that wants to ask a question, you want to raise your hand or, thank you so much, Jonathan, that was amazing. Anybody want to make a statement, or I'd just like to open it up to just any reactions or what you guys thought, Santa Barbara City College. Any questions, Melinda?
I'm trying to scroll through. You can unmute yourself if you.
Yeah, that guy, he raised his hand, the one. Anybody else?
Dr. Carrasco, if I could ask a question, I'd love to.
Sure.
Because I've been following carefully, and I've spoken out at several meetings of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Trustees and I've posted my email address a couple times in the chat because I've been looking into the candidates very carefully. How do you come back at these people in the community that are saying we got to get rid of ethnic studies because they're distracting kids from learning the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic?
Well, I would just state, the facts in regards to ethnic studies and what it does in regards to the narrative. And again, living in a multicultural, I think people are very misinformed and they have this natural reaction. Elias, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, no, thank you. And just popping out of character a little bit, I completed a PhD in English literature in 2017. And, part of my area was ethnic studies. And I participated directly in the Arizona Ethnic Studies program. The movement that's currently happening is a response to that kind of right-wing attack in Arizona. And Arizona is completely different. It's actually, a very Republican-led government. But one thing they did is they institutionalized those kinds of attacks, and they ultimately failed because it's not grounded in anything real. Those kinds of sentiments are grounded in bias and also hearsay and just kind of ignorance, not knowing what ethnic studies is and what ethnic studies does. And you could hear it in the testimony of the students that spoke earlier. It's always good to have maybe like professors and students speak to these people, but the bottom line is that the research is in. It's been in for a long time. There's a Stanford study. You could Google up Stanford Ethnic Studies study. Sleater, Dr. Sleater at Monterey Bay did an earlier study, a more qualitative study about the effects of ethnic studies. And the studies show that all students, especially white students and students of color, benefit from taking an ethnic studies class. Gives them a more well-rounded understanding of the real world around them. You have to always keep in mind what ethnic studies does is it shines a light on histories, stories, and realities that have been undiscussed in classrooms, for decades. And then there's about 4 or 5 things that the studies show. The Stanford study in particular said it improves attendance, just students going to school. And then that it showed a 1-point improvement in GPA. So a student that had a 2.5 without attending an ethnic studies class is now having a 3.5 GPA if they're engaged in an ethnic studies class. And that's because they get more engaged in not only that class, but they get engaged in learning. And then school and learning have a purpose. And then that's connected to a third thing, and that's civic engagement. So a lot of these studies point out that ethnic studies make students more interested in the world around them, in their neighborhoods, in institutions, in participation. So civic engagement improves. And then a major thing, and Dr. Carrasco's students are a perfect example of that, is that ethnic studies provide students with a college-going identity. So it starts giving them the space to think about going to college, and it connects them often with pathways, networks, people like us speaking in his classroom. We started from the bottom. We're from the underclass, if you will, or the lower working classes, and we've gone to college. So it makes that college-going identity a reality. And then finally, and going back to the hilarious comedian Che Castro that was on earlier, critical thinking. One of the requirements in a college education is critical thinking, and ethnic studies fulfill that at the university. And at the high school, it starts making students think critically, and it empowers them, to feel, smart, intelligent by knowing some of these critiques that come out of ethnic studies. So, and we need to go out there and think critically. When police pull us over, when we're discriminated in businesses or by institutions, we need to be able to process that. If we're not thinking critically, we're more likely to internalize racism. Oh, I got pulled over because I'm a bad person. My skin is dark and I'm probably dark inside. I don't know, what goes on in the mind of someone going through internalized racism. Well, ethnic studies breaks that down for us, and it breaks that down for young people. And that's why a lot of us are so passionate about it. We see these things that ethnic studies does, and that's why we fight so hard to get this going. And it's inspirational to hear the students say that they want to carry this torch on and fight this struggle.
Right on, Elias. John, thank you so much for that question. And at the beginning, I forgot to mention, I'm born and raised in Oxnard, California. I went to Channel Islands High School. Then I went to San Diego State and I got a BA in Chicano Studies, Political Science. Then I went to San Francisco State and got a master's in Ethics Studies and UC Berkeley. That's where me and Elias met. And then I went to UCSB and I got a PhD in Chicano Studies. And one of the things that I live for, like when I met Diego, Diego is just sharp. And I told Diego, you should get a PhD. And he's like, yeah? I go, yeah, get a PhD. And so again, you know, we are living ethnic studies. And even when I took ethnic studies at UC Berkeley, it was amazing. You know, when I took my Asian American studies classes, to know the difference between Chinese, Filipinos, Japanese, Koreans, you know, it just helps you out understand who's around you. Very 2020. Melinda, we have a question from Cameron, or who's next? Cameron, you have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I want to know, how can we best teach our children at home about diversity and to better prepare them to understand ethnicity in and of itself? How can we what can we do, take steps to teach them about diversity? Because as young children, we often tend to, as a parent, we often tend to, you know, keep it to myself, like don't let them in on the bad things, to protect them. It's a protection instinct. So how can we best prepare them at home for?
Well, I would start with Howard Zinn for young adults. No, I'm joking. No, but just seriously, you know. So again, you know, I just think, you know, like I look back to how much, you know, just like the basic concepts, you know, to just, I mean, treat people by the content of their character, be able to identify what is white supremacy ideology, what is sexism, you know. What age do you start teaching children that? You know, I'm not a psychiatrist, you know, but all I know is that you learn from your parents, you learn from people that, you know, you're around. And so these major concepts are like, difference isn't wrong, you know, like even, you know, so I teach racial formations. And so right now I'm ending off with Arabs and Middle Eastern people, right? That are just starting to get racialized, right? And so you're asking a very difficult question. Melinda, how would you answer that question?
Cameron, it's a great question, and I'm going to be very honest with you. There are, for the first time, and it makes me so hopeful, we're seeing literature for young kids. You know, we're talking about pre-K, and the ability to start reading to your child. You know, Diego, as a parent, knows the importance of that ability to do so. And don't be afraid when they ask hard questions. I think it's really important to have an honest discussion, especially as they get older. But here's the beauty. You know, there's so much literature out there. I just was recently asked to be on the Americas Award Committee. And we get to choose the books that are going to be the influencers in K through 12. And it gives me such great hope, because I thought, oh, this is going to be something that's not going to be too difficult. I'm expected to be reading thousands of books. That's an embarrassment of riches. And so what I want to let you know is that put your child with readings, with books, discuss things. The world is their oyster, and let their curiosity help guide you. And explore museums. I have to tell you that one of the most important things I've seen is that children working with other children. Thursday nights at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art before the pandemic was opened up for free. And it has a whole work area so that kids can engage with the arts. So all of these things add to this. And I would encourage you, to look at the arts as another way to also engage, because I think there's a lot out there.
Right on, Cameron. Thank you so much for that question. Who had the next question, Melinda? It was from, did you see?
I don't see.
There was two people that raised their hand. Could you find out? While we're finding out, somebody raise their hand who wants to talk or question?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, yeah, no, I just wanted to agree with what A.Carrasco said about ethnic studies should be taught, you know, in fact, nationwide, I think, not just in states where, you know, there's a heavy, dense ethnic population. Because I work in kind of like in construction or light industrial like industry, and I work alongside a lot of private contractors who come from, you know, they're white, and they come from the flyover states like Arkansas, Montana, and Alabama. And I get along with them great, and they get along with me and with whatever black people are around. But they seem to be in denial that there's systemic racism, and they kind of see like, well, I grew up poor, and you should just work hard, and you'll get all the same things as I did. But they don't understand that there's certain things that people had that set them back that did not get them started on even footing from the very beginning.
Right on, Edgar. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your comment. And so again, I really want to emphasize, we're dealing with huge questions, right? And so when you are able to identify these different systems of oppression, but the major concept, again, when I go back to having, and literally the reason why I gave the definition of racism, so you could think about who has access to healthcare, education, housing. Right now in Santa Barbara, why can't we develop affordable housing? Santa Barbara is so wealthy, and we should, in regards to rent control, right? In regards to food, to create a society that we wish would exist. And these are huge questions, right? And so when, again, within my class, when I make statements like in 1968, 91% of all college students were white, that's undebatable. Certain people were excluded from higher education. Civil rights, Black Power movement, Chicano Power movement opened it up. So again, having that structural analysis intertwined with that individualistic analysis, you're able to solve the issues of society. And so again, we're talking about racism, immigration, sexism. There's no 1-2 buckle my shoe answer. It's complicated, right? But what we do know is when you start educating the population, that is when you start to make changes in society. And we do know that this is a multicultural, society that we live in, and difference, again, is not bad. Next question. Thank you, Edgar. Do you see anybody, Melinda?
No, I don't.
Joe,
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I also wanted to mention, and I think it's tied to what you do in your classroom, Tomas and Melinda, is participating in history. A lot of learning that's gone on historically has been very passive. The student is supposed to be passive, and another tenet of ethnic studies, especially Chicano studies, was returning to the community or engaging with community issues. And so in ethnic studies classrooms, what's unique is, the activity that goes on there. Learning is very often applied. There's a praxis, is what the educators call it, putting thought into action. And so that praxis that goes on in ethnic studies is very unique. That's super activating. It gives students something to look forward to. It makes learning and reading purposeful, instead of just reading to take a quiz and get points, abstract points, you're taking a quiz to learn a concept, to engage with the community and try to prove it or disprove it or figure out how something works, in real life. That's really dynamic. And so this whole, and Paulo Freire put it in the terms of history. He said a lot of learning that goes on in Western institutions is very abstract, history especially. You learn history as something, as a past fiction or nonfiction. But in ethnic studies classes, Freire would say, students are participating in history. They're making history. They're making the world by, engaging with it. Not just reading about the world, but in the Freudian terms, reading the world, and rereading it and writing the world, creating the world. So this whole, participatory action type of research that ethnic studies does, and the arts. I love when Chicano art projects or art classes do the Day of the Dead participation. That is so dynamic, and so things like that I think are unique to ethnic studies.
Excellent. So one of the sayings that we have in Chicano studies, ethnic studies, is that the present has a past. And I wanted to include that Santa Barbara has been very, very unique and very, very powerful in regards to Chicano studies. Was it 1968, Elias, or 1969? that
69 is the conference and
1969, the Plan de Santa Barbara emerged in regards to the creation of Chicano studies and Mecha and organizing, and again, creating access to Chicanos to agreed populations, right? And in the power of Chicano studies, it would be one of the first to the Plan de Santa Barbara, right on, Elias.
Thank you.
It would be one of the first to have a PhD program in Chicano studies. And thank God I was able to get my PhD, study with George Lipsitz, Mario Garcia, and I have a lot of friends in the Chicano Studies Department at UCSB, and I'm sending a lot of students to them. And so again, you know, it's a powerhouse. So, you know, we're carrying on, and our students talk about an educational pipeline, literally. So I think there's about 5 or 6 of our students going to UCSB right now.
Awesome.
So any other comments or questions to close out this amazing Chicano, Chicana, Latino, Latina Heritage Month celebration? So before we got colonized, you know, we all had a year, but now we only have a month. No, that was a great question, y'all. So any other comments or questions?
I have a question, Tomas. It's
Hey,
Peter Rojas. Hi. Thank you, and Melinda and Che and Tia Loca, or I forgot her name, but yeah, and the students. That was really very heartwarming to hear from them. I wanted to know what your opinion is on this. You know, even though we are seen as people of color, and given the huge numbers of us who claim to have Latino-based heritage, why hasn't there been, in your opinion, huge social and political mobilizations like the one that has occurred with Black Lives Matter?
Well, in 2006, we did have one when they were gonna pass that, what was it, Elias? HB 4, it was, so Pete, are you asking in regards to just like the children in cages and women getting hysterectomies and ICE, and is that what you're talking about, just the oppression that we're still going through, or what exactly?
Well, I know that that'll be ongoing, probably not absolved in my lifetime, but I just wanted to know, given the numbers of us who would consider themselves Latinos, why haven't there been greater strides in mobilizing as a group to make differences and getting the attention, much like what is happening now through, you know, the Black Lives Matter?
I mean, my natural reaction to that question would be, you know, in regards to mass media, we've been dealing with the white-black dichotomy for a long, long time, right? And so you'll once in a while you'll hear African Americans throw in brown or black, but I just think that our population, you know, we need to come to the forefront, you know, whether it's in mass media. I mean, if you look at Los Angeles, El Paso, San Antonio, Chicago, we have, you know, but in regards to the dominant culture, the dominant narrative acknowledging it, for some reason, you know, whether they're really comfortable with the black-white dichotomy, but when you start dealing with almost 61 million people that are actually indigenous to the Southwest, that's another whole ball of wax. But what we have made, we have made progress, you know, whether it's in higher education, there's different aspects that we have been, but one of the things that sets us apart from all other groups, we've had nonstop immigration since 1848. So we'll have, you know, segments of our population that do really well, and we still have migration coming in. And there's, for some reason, and this is just my analysis, for some reason, people think that they can do whatever they want to a Mexican. Like, you're right. Why haven't we stood up for these children that are in cages in El Paso? Unbelievable, right? Or just what's going on? Melinda, what do you think?
You know, Peter, I think it's an excellent question. And I want to go back to the LA Times. People, when they read the news and they start believing the ways in which people are described, we have to remember the LA Times used to call us greasers, wetbacks. These are such derogatory terms that have such a very heavy laden construct. And when you start to absorb it and you're constantly having to resist, it's an exhaustive aspect, especially here in the Southwest. But to go back to this, every time we try to make headway. I take Arizona in particular, and I look at the banned books, and I look at the elimination of the Mexican American Studies program there. This was absolutely crucial in getting students into the pipeline for higher education. They stop it, it then becomes part of the court system. It goes all the way to Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals up in San Francisco, and they find out, yes, it's racial animus. I mean, what ends up happening is we get bogged down with so many of these things, these barriers over and over and over again. And to go back to the LA Times, here we've got a population of nearly 50%, and we've got less than 13% of people who are of Latino, Mexicano descent as reporters. This is problematic. And we've got to change the system. And one of the things that we do by education is constantly reminding ourselves how to insert the hidden figures of our communities. How do we show that we have shown resistance? How do we insert that in the dialogue so that we can empower our students? That's what we're doing in our classrooms every single time we get up and we talk to our students.
And like Jonathan Gomez was just saying, just because the mass media does not cover it does not mean that we are resisting. There's a lot going on. So, but you're right, Peter. Excellent question. And again, even if you look at COVID-19, like what the heck? Black and brown people are dying, at higher rates. I asked my friends in New York, well, where did all the white people go? They left, or what's going on in LA right now, So again, these are very, very difficult questions, excellent questions. And most importantly, what this is about a dialogue, it's about a discussion. But you're right, we do, there are a lot of positive inroads, so we are doing, we're making progress, and at the same time, we're under attack. And we see it literally, whether it's 1994 with Pete Wilson, whether we see it, us being referred to racist rhetoric, on a national level, and nobody really addressing it, whether you see it on CNBC, where there's very few Latinos that are actually giving us voice, and then also the craziness of Fox Entertainment, so there's a lot that we are dealing with. Did you want to say something, Elias? Or Peter?
No, just thank you. Thank you for everything.
All right, great, thank you so much. Well, at this point, we're going to close up. I just want to thank everybody for hopefully we've learned, we've existed, and everybody, wear your mask, wash your hands, and social distance. And hopefully one of these days, we could go walk at Santa Barbara City College again one of these days. So you all take care. God bless. Go ahead, Elias.
Oh, no, nothing. I'm good.
Okay. All right, Melinda. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, Tomas, everybody.
All right. Good job, Elias. Good job, Melinda.
All right, Tomas.
All right.